You know that friend who always seems perfectly content doing their own thing? The one who declines the party invitation without a hint of FOMO, who spends their Saturday night reading or painting or just existing in their own company. And somehow, they're not miserable about it. Maybe that person is you. And if it is, you've probably noticed how often people treat your preference for solitude like it's something that needs fixing. You should get out more, they say, as if enjoying your own company is some kind of social deficiency. But here's what's fascinating. The psychology behind people who genuinely enjoy being alone reveals something far more complex and, frankly, far more interesting than our culture typically acknowledges.
Let me tell you what's actually happening in the brain of someone who thrives in solitude, because it's not what most people think. This isn't about being antisocial or damaged or running away from connection. It's about how your nervous system is wired, how your brain processes stimulation, and what genuinely fills your psychological cup. And understanding this might just change how you see yourself, or that friend, or that family member who's always been a little different.
First, we need to talk about stimulation thresholds, because this is where everything starts. Your brain has what psychologists call an optimal level of arousal. Think of it like a Goldilocks zone for your nervous system. Too little stimulation and you're bored, restless, understimulated. Too much and you're overwhelmed, exhausted, fried. Most people assume everyone's Goldilocks zone is in roughly the same place, but that's completely wrong. Some people need constant input, conversation, activity, the buzz of others around them to hit their sweet spot. Others? Their nervous system reaches optimal arousal with far less external stimulation. This is where introversion comes in, but not in the way pop psychology usually frames it. Introversion isn't about being shy or socially anxious, though those can co-occur. It's fundamentally about where you get your energy and how your brain responds to dopamine. Research by psychologist Hans Eysenck suggested that introverts have naturally higher baseline cortical arousal. Translation? Their brains are already running at a higher idle speed. Adding a lot of external stimulation on top of that is like revving an engine that's already warm. It doesn't feel energizing, it feels like too much. Meanwhile, extroverts have lower baseline arousal, so they actively seek external stimulation to bring themselves up to that optimal zone. Neither is better or worse, they're just different starting points. But here's where it gets really interesting for people who enjoy being alone. They've learned, whether consciously or not, that solitude is where they can regulate their nervous system most effectively. It's not isolation, it's calibration. Think about what happens when you're alone and you actually enjoy it. Your brain isn't shutting down or going dormant. It's doing something incredibly active and valuable. It's processing. When you're in social situations, a huge amount of your cognitive resources goes toward what's called social cognition. You're reading faces, interpreting tone, managing impressions, predicting reactions, navigating group dynamics. It's like running multiple apps simultaneously on your phone. Sure, you can do it, but your battery drains fast. When you're alone, those apps close. But your brain doesn't just idle. Instead, it shifts into what neuroscientists call the default mode network. This is the network that activates when you're not focused on the outside world. When you're daydreaming, reflecting, making sense of experiences, consolidating memories, imagining possibilities. It's where meaning-making happens. It's where you integrate all the scattered pieces of your day into something coherent. People who enjoy solitude aren't avoiding life. They're processing it at a deeper level. And here's something our hyper-connected culture really struggles to accept. This processing time is essential for psychological health. A study published in the British Journal of Psychology found that for people with high intelligence and lower social needs, frequent social interaction actually decreased life satisfaction. Think about that. For certain people, too much socializing doesn't just feel draining, it actively interferes with their well-being. It prevents them from engaging in the activities and thought processes that genuinely nourish them. But let's go deeper, because enjoying solitude isn't just about energy management or cognitive processing. It's also about identity. When you're alone, you get to be unedited. There's no performance, no code switching, no managing how you're perceived. You're not the employee or the friend or the partner or the child. You're just you, in your raw, unfiltered state. For some people, this is terrifying. Being alone means confronting themselves without distraction. But for others, this is freedom. It's where they feel most authentic, most aligned with who they actually are beneath all the social roles.
Psychologist Esther Buchholz wrote about what she calls the call of solitude, this deep human need for alone time that allows for self-discovery and creativity. She argued that we've pathologized something that's actually necessary for psychological development. Children need alone time to develop imagination. Adolescents need it to form identity. Adults need it to maintain that identity and continue growing. But somewhere along the way, we decided that constant connection was the goal, that being alone meant being lonely. And we lost the distinction between solitude and isolation because they're not the same thing at all. Loneliness is involuntary,
painful, a feeling of disconnection, even when you might be surrounded by people. Solitude is chosen, restorative, a feeling of being connected to yourself. The person who enjoys being alone isn't lonely. They're engaged in what psychologist Anthony Storr called the capacity to be alone, which he identified as one of the most important signs of emotional maturity. It means you're not dependent on others to regulate your emotional state or validate your existence. You've developed a rich enough inner life that you can sustain yourself. And let's talk about that inner life for a second, because this is where people who enjoy solitude really shine. They tend to have incredibly active imaginations, deep interests, the ability to entertain themselves with their own thoughts. They're often creative, not because solitude makes you creative, but because creative people need solitude to do their work. Writing, painting, composing, thinking through complex problems. All of these require sustained, uninterrupted focus. You can't write a novel in 15-minute chunks between social obligations. You need long stretches of alone time where your mind can wander, explore, make unexpected connections. There's also something here about autonomy and self-determination. People who enjoy being alone often score high in what psychologists call intrinsic motivation. They do things because the activity itself is rewarding, not because it impresses others or earns social approval. They read because they love reading, not because it's a good conversation starter. They pursue hobbies because the hobbies fascinate them, not because they're Instagrammable. And solitude protects that intrinsic motivation. It's hard to stay connected to what you genuinely love when you're constantly calibrating to what others think. Now, none of this means that people who enjoy solitude are hermits or misanthropes. Most have meaningful relationships. They're capable of deep connection and intimacy, but they're selective. They've learned that quality matters infinitely more than quantity. They'd rather have 3 deep friendships than 30 shallow ones. They'd rather have 1 meaningful conversation than 10 trivial ones. And crucially, they don't experience being alone as a gap in their social life that needs filling. They experience it as valuable time in its own right. There's something quietly radical about that in our current moment. We live in an age of relentless connectivity, where being unreachable feels almost transgressive. We're supposed to respond immediately, be available constantly, perform our lives for an audience. But people who genuinely enjoy solitude are pushing back against that without even necessarily meaning to. They're saying, my inner world matters. My rest matters. My unobserved moments matter. And you don't need to witness my life for it to be meaningful. So if you're someone who enjoys being alone, here's what I want you to understand. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken or antisocial or missing out. You've simply discovered something that our culture is slowly, painfully relearning, that solitude is not the opposite of connection. It's the foundation of it. You can't truly connect with others if you're disconnected from yourself. And sometimes being alone is how you find your way back home. The next time someone suggests you need to be more social, maybe just smile and know something they don't. You figured out that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one with yourself. And that relationship requires time, attention, and space. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's self-respect in its quietest, most powerful form.